then they released it, and I was like, that's the same bow. I mean, to look at it, it looks exactly the same. So as you shot it, like, what were some of the differences that you felt in it?
Even Matthews is saying incremental, small, tiny little changes. It's called a shortstop stabilizer, and or dampener, whatever they want to call it. But they call it the shortstop, and a lot of guys have been calling it other inappropriate things.
Alright guys, welcome back to the eHunter Newscast. Got a great podcast for you today. On the podcast, I have Garrett Weaver of the Onpoint podcast and YouTube channel. If you guys have been following the eHunter Newscast for a while, you'll remember Garrett. He was on with me last year. We talked about the 2020 bows, and you know, the great thing about Garrett is he shoots all these bows. He becomes very familiar with them. So this is actually part one of the 2021 bows. Garrett hasn't been able to shoot all the bows yet, and so we wanted to sit down and talk about the ones that he has shot, which would include Hoyt and Matthews. And so the majority of this podcast is related to those brands of bows, but we do talk about some other ones, and we have a good little chat session talking about different things. So if you're in the market for a new bow, or just interested in what the new changes are, stay tuned, and you'll hear a lot about these new bows. Pretty cool, you know, not a lot of changes with some of the different brands, but other brands, they make some pretty significant changes. Actually kind of caught me by surprise when Garrett told me which bow he would be buying if he was buying a new bow in 2021. So before we get to the podcast though, guys, as always, we want to thank our title sponsor, Vortex Optics. Vortex sponsors everything that we do here at eHunter. We're grateful for them. They are awesome. If you guys haven't checked them out, go to their website, vortexoptics.com. And man, they got everything: rifle scopes, binoculars, spotting scopes, accessories. They got the Vortex Wear stuff coming out. They've got the Vortex Edge program that they've got coming out. So go check them out. Lots of cool stuff that is going on over there at Vortex. Also stay tuned. We're going to have some giveaways coming up here pretty quickly on our social media platforms. So stay tuned for those. Also, we have a monthly sponsor for the podcast this month, which is Phoneskope. If you guys are not familiar with Phoneskope, they've actually sponsored us in the past, and love Phoneskope. I use it every single year. It's basically what it is. It's an attachment. It's a case for your phone, so you put your phone in there, and then it's got an adapter that goes to whatever optic you use, whether it's your binoculars or whether it's your spotting scope. I use my spotting scope more for videoing and video and pictures, but Phoneskope is awesome. Really kind of the front runner in digital, whatever you want to call it, taking pictures through your optics. It's amazing. So like I said, I use it all the time. I love it, and if you've seen some of our YouTube videos, a lot of that footage is taken through a Phoneskope. Curtis uses the Phoneskope Precision, the mount that goes on your scope, and you'll see a lot of his fox hunting videos are done through his Phoneskope. So great company. They're close to my hometown there in Utah, and just a bunch of really cool guys that have made an awesome product for us to use as hunters, as outdoorsmen, but really whatever you do. If you bird watch, if you hunt, if you just like to go glassing, really cool product. So we want to thank them for sponsoring the podcast this month. So we're grateful for all of our sponsors. Appreciate them, the support they give us. Grateful for your guys' support as well. Please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. That does mean a lot to us. Also, if you guys wouldn't mind, please leave us some reviews, some star ratings, whether that be on Apple Podcasts or Podbean or whatever. Leave comments, guys. Those kind of things go a long ways for us, getting us to the top of the search engines. So if you guys wouldn't mind doing those things for us, we would greatly appreciate it. But please, please, please subscribe to the podcast. Without further ado, let's jump into the podcast with Garrett. If you guys have any questions about this, we talk about it at the end. You can reach out to either one of us. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you guys have. So appreciate you guys. Let's jump right into it. All right, guys, welcome back to the eHunter Newscast. Got an exciting episode for you guys today, and actually similar to an episode that we did last year, and actually just talking about it before I hit record. It was one of our better podcasts last year. So on the podcast today, I have Garrett Weaver of the Onpoint podcast. If you guys haven't checked out his podcast or his YouTube page, you're missing out because he does a lot of cool stuff on there. So Garrett, welcome back, man.
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
Dude, so stoked to have you back. You are the bow connoisseur, the bow whisperer kind of guy. So,
Well, not self-proclaimed, but yes.
I'll proclaim it. I'll put that out there. I've watched a lot. Well, I'm not gonna even claim to even know what I'm talking about when it comes to bows. I mean, I hunt with bows, and that's pretty much the extent of it. And so, I watch a lot of your YouTube videos to kind of figure out what the heck I'm supposed to do with these things. So
I appreciate it. I think it sounds like a couple of people watch them, so that's I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
I've seen the stats. I think you got more than a couple, Garrett.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shoot. Well, Garrett, actually, you know what? If you wouldn't mind, just take a second. I'm sure everybody knows who you are because they've listened to the other podcast, but maybe take a couple minutes and tell us about you.
Well, Garrett Weaver from Oregon, and born and raised here. Grew up hunting, blacktails, Roosevelts, mule deer. Oregon is game rich, so we hunt pretty much everything here, bear, and got into bow hunting on my own in high school, and basically had to figure that out without having any mentorship, like hardly any. The guy that set up my bow gave me a crash course on how to shoot it for about 10 minutes, and then that was about all I got. So fast forward a few years, start finding, like, I found success for deer. Elk took me forever to find success with a bow, but deer, and learned a lot of hard lessons along the way, made a lot of mistakes, shot a lot of arrows, and ended up saying, I need to post a YouTube video, and then it kind of blew up from there. I was posting a video of me shooting a halon, and it kind of took off, and guys were asking questions, and finally I figured out, well, hey, if I take the spotlight off myself and just trying to help people, maybe I could make a YouTube channel, and kind of just spiraled from there, man. I mean, I started doing gear reviews and shooting tips and tricks and talking to experts and getting mentorship from guys that have won championships and triple crowns, and I just became a sponge, and now it's what I talk about like every day. So that's what I do, and I, just like it says in my profile, I share my passion for hunting and helping people along the way, and that's what I do.
It's really funny how, I mean, obviously this is my passion as well. Hunting is kind of my life. Everything that I do pretty much revolves around hunting as far as hobbies go anyways, and I've loved doing this podcast because I learn more than I probably help other people, and I'm sure you found the same as you've done all your bow reviews and things like that.
Yeah, well, with the podcast, man, I'm asking a lot of these questions because I honestly want to know. I mean, there's a few podcasts where I have guests where I don't want to be the expert. I want to have them provide the answers, and I know what they're going to say before I ask it, and there's been a few of those, but 99% of them, it's like I'm learning right beside the audience, and it's been a huge blessing in my life. I've made a lot of good friends. I get to meet people like you and talk to people like you, and it's just really cool, man. Some of the greatest people I've met have come since I started the podcast and really started networking and making phone calls and just helping people, and it's been a huge blessing in my life. I one of the best decisions I ever made.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more with what we've done with eHunter. Same thing. The people that you meet is absolutely amazing, and the knowledge base that you get. You couldn't really get it any way else. I mean, it would take a long time to learn what you learn, but as you talk to people, you feed off of them and what they know. They come with tips and tricks, and it's unbelievably helpful. And yeah, I am not, like I said in the beginning, I am not, especially when it comes to bows, I'm not the smartest guy. I'm not the smartest or sharpest tool in the shed when it comes to it. I know how to kill with it, and that's pretty much the extent of where I go with it. And so I love leaning on guys like you that know what they're talking about. So, but
well, yeah.
I appreciate you being back on the podcast. And just for the listeners, we're going to actually do this in a two-part series. We're going to start this podcast is going to be about two specific bow brands, and because we've got a lot to talk about these two brands, and then we'll do a part two of this where we'll talk about some other brands as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
so Garrett, let's jump into it. And we talked last year about all the different bows, and I think at that time I just barely bought my new Matthews VXR, and I love it. I mean, I love that bow. It has done amazing the past year. I really couldn't ask for any more out of that bow. So if you don't mind, let's start with the Matthews. Tell us what Matthews has for 2021.
So they're calling it the V3, and they have a 31 and I believe a 27. And I honestly my memory sucks so bad I have to go back and watch my own videos to like, what were the specs on that again? So yeah, they came out basically with, and I call it the version 3, and I think that's probably where they were headed with that. And so when guys are saying, well, they changed this and that and this and that. Yes, they did. They changed a few things, but even Matthews is saying incremental, small, tiny little changes is pushing the needle, and that's what they're doing. And I agree. They pushed the needle. They came out with some great bows, starting with the Halon, that platform, which they are currently still riding. And now you're getting it basically from a Halon 6, you're slimming it down, you made it a little bit longer at the traverse, and now you're going back and you're sleeking it down every year down into what we call the V3. And there's a 31-inch ATA and a 27-inch ATA. And the V1 basically would have been the Vortex, and then the V2 would have been the VXR, and now the V3 is the V3. So even Matthews is basically owning the fact that they're making tiny little tweaks, and they're not making these giant leaps right now. They're just making tiny tweaks to, in my opinion, the most successful platform they've ever created.
It's like I said, it's an amazing platform, and I like I said, I have the VXR. I've absolutely loved it. And when they first came out with the bow, they kind of teased us on social media, saying, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
release date this date," and I'm like, "All right, sweet. I get to see what this new Matthews bow looks like," because now I'm for some reason a Matthews guy. I've been a Hoyt guy my entire life, and now I shoot one Matthews, and I'm a Matthews guy. But I must be a bandwagon type of a guy. But and then they released it, and I was like, "That's the same bow." I mean, to look at it, it looks exactly the same. So, as you shot it, like, what were some of the differences that you felt in it?
There wasn't really that much of a difference in my opinion. Some guys are saying it's a little bit smoother, and maybe it is, maybe if it's smoother, it's not more than 5% smoother. It's so similar to last year's bow. What you're really going to notice is that they elongated the riser, and what they're claiming is this is Matthews saying this, right? So I don't want guys thinking that I'm bashing Matthews, right? So they're saying that previously we thought that limb and that ATA was the stability and wide limbs was stability and aiming accuracy, but it's actually riser length. And it's like, okay, so were we wrong before, or is it all that stuff now plus the riser being longer? It's just I don't know. I think they're just marketing.
Yeah.
And they're doing a good job at it. But so this is the longest riser to axle ratio they have ever created, and it feels extremely stable, and it has been extremely stable, in my opinion, like I said, since the Halon.
Mm-hmm.
So they still got the fat, widened out limbs. They've got a longer riser on this one. They've got the caged upper and lower cage. And they've basically made the same exact bow, but if you compare the two and you get a picture side by side, or if you hold it in your hand and you look at both of them together, the V3 looks more modernized. It looks more sleek and cut down. And basically, the best way I can describe it is like you left the VXR in the sauna for an hour and then took it back out, and it just lost all the little fat. It just like it trimmed itself down a little bit, and that's basically what you're looking at. So, I mean, it's yeah. Go ahead.
As far as weight goes, do you know, is the V3 lighter than the VXR, or are they pretty similar?
They're pretty freaking similar, and I'll give you the numbers here in a second, but they're pretty darn similar, dude. I thought it would have weighed less, but it's still
Yeah.
4.5 pounds. The 31 is still 4.5 pounds,
Oh
and they've
man.
been flirting with that 4.5 pound mark for since the Halon. I think the Halon, off the top of my head, I'm reaching back here, but it was like 4.55 pounds or something like that.
Uh
So
huh.
they've been going, flirting with 4.5 pounds for quite a few years, and it's within easily within half a pound, easily within half a pound. But I can go back and look here real quick. But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's extremely similar.
I guess that would make sense. I mean, they did kind of sleek it down a little bit, but yeah, they elongated the riser a little bit, so maybe you're gonna
Right.
get a little bit of extra weight there, or maybe. So it makes sense for it to be that. While you're looking that number up, Gary,
Hmm.
just for well, and I'm not even saying maybe because I did get this comment last time from our last podcast. Is people
Hmm.
ask for a little bit more detail. I think you and I kind of brushed over a couple of things, and one of the questions I got last time was, and I think it was 28 and 31 on the
Hmm.
VXR. I think the V3 is 31 and 27 ATAs.
Correct.
So for someone that's looking for a bow, maybe they haven't shot bows ever in their life. What's the advantages of the 31 versus the 27?
That's a really good question. And before we move on, last year's bow was 0.16 pounds heavier. So,
Oh, jeez.
um, so I mean, you're close,
It's the
man. I mean,
same.
you're flirting
Yeah.
with five, yeah, 4.5, and we'll come back to that. But what you're looking at here, and a lot of guys, they're missing a really good portion of the market for guys that like the longer axle to axle bows.
Hmm.
They're just inherently more stable, and they're just not as torquey. Basically, is they're easier to shoot longer axle to axle for a lot of guys.
Yeah.
But the size of the cams do offer a better string angle than you would expect for having a 31-inch axle to axle or even a 27-inch axle to axle. Like, the cams are absolutely monsters on these things. They're pretty darn huge, and you're basically, your string angle is going to be steeper than a lot of guys like, and guys are going to maybe have a hard time. You're going to have to really focus on your form better and have a good shot execution to shoot these bows. They're very shootable. It doesn't take a lot of work, but some guys might notice a little bit of a paper tuning issue. I was just reading a thread on that today, and I was like, well, you just need to learn how to hold your bow. But it's just I don't know. I personally haven't had any problems shooting them. I've actually liked the shorter models just as much as the longer models that they've come out with. So
Hmm.
the 27 versus the 31, they're both really shootable for me. But I'm only a 28-inch draw. If you're like a 30-inch draw, or if you're shooting the V3 and you're shooting a 31-inch draw, you might not care for it so much. And some guys will. I know some guys will, but I think more guys would tend to gravitate for like a 34-inch bow versus a 31.
And that's how I kind of answered his question. I try to do the best I could. Again, self-proclaimed. I do not know what I'm talking about when it comes to bows, but um, Matthews, I'd spent a lot of time shooting Matthews because, again, I just barely bought on that VXR,
Uh-huh.
and when I shot the 28, it was a great bow. I enjoyed shooting it just as much as the 31. But I felt like that 31 was a lot more stable, and as I shot further distances, in fact, I took it and shot it 100 yards, which was pretty awesome. The
Mm-hmm.
day I was testing them out, and shooting at 100 yards, I just felt so much more stable with the 31 versus the 28. But I also told that guy, I said, I think if I was sitting in a tree stand a lot or in a ground blind a lot, I'd probably want the 28 just for the compact size and maneuverability of it. Plus, I know I'm probably not going to shoot over 40, 50 yards out of a tree stand, so I wouldn't, I think I could be comfortable shooting it. But
Yeah.
that was kind of my
Yeah. I
answer to
mean,
him.
when you look at Matthews, they design their bows, in my opinion. They design their bows on the East Coast, and that doesn't necessarily reflect what we would like to see over here on the West Coast.
Hmm.
I mean, that's what you're getting: blinds and tree stands, and over here in Oregon, I would say maybe 5% of bow hunters hunt out of a tree stand. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe more if you're lucky, but I've never really had a problem even shooting a 32, 33-inch axle to axle, in tight quarters. And
Hmm.
it's just, there's a lot more room to play with the axle to axles for Matthews moving forward. they've been, last year was a 31 and a half and a 28. This year they're a 31 and a 27. So, like I said, they've been flirting with the same specs here, just
Yeah.
coming out with kind of a rehashed version of what they've been coming out with. So
Yeah.
that's what you're looking at.
What about speed? Is there any difference in speed from last year to this year, even from going
I
from the tri or yeah, is it the
No, so this year I know this off the top of my head. It's 342, and last year it was really similar to that as well. I mean, you've got the same cams, and you've got practically very, very, very similar brace heights, and very, very similar axle to axles, and so they're basically going to be shooting almost the same speeds. And I can get you the last year's specs, but no, same cams, very similar brace heights, very similar axle to axles, and you're getting a very similar performing bow.
I almost remember. I think I remember it's like three. If I remember right, 341. So if this year's model is 342, you're
Hmm.
sitting right in that same ballpark.
Yes. Yep.
Is it the
100%.
same speed for the 27 and the 31?
Yeah. Well, yeah, kind of. So the 27 only goes up to like 30 and a half inches if memory serves me, and they give the IBO if it was at
Oh,
31. So
gotcha.
if you go if you go on there, it's kind of funny how they word it, but um and this is just, it says 342 at IBO spec, but it only goes to 30 and a half, and I'm gonna make sure I'm telling the truth there. So because I just want to make sure I'm
Sneaky.
telling the right thing. But yeah, it only goes to, excuse me, only goes to 29 and a half. So
Oh,
um so yeah, I mean, but to be fair, and this is where I lose a lot of Matthews guys, is Matthews runs long, man. The one that I measured this year was over half an inch. It was closer to running about 3/4 of an inch. It was really close to running 3/4 of an inch long.
hmm,
A lot of guys have noticed that Matthews run about a half an inch long, and or a little bit more, which is what I found this year. So when you're shooting that 29 and a half inch bow, you're probably actually shooting like 30 and a quarter or 30 and 3/8 or somewhere in there, maybe less than 3/8, but you're shooting more than what you're actually set at, and that's why they feel, for a lot of guys, they probably feel a little stiff,
uh-huh.
and they probably feel a little stretched out when they're actually shooting a 28-inch draw, and they have it set on 28, but yet they're actually pulling like maybe 25 or 28 and a half, or just a little bit more.
Hmm. That's interesting. I didn't know that about Matthews. Set mine up
Hmm.
at 29 because I'm pretty close to 29, maybe just a little touch over. So
Hmm.
it's probably shooting more like 29 and a half then.
I would put money on it.
Interesting.
Yep.
Another question I had about the new Matthews. They made a big deal out of the VXR when I bought it about this silent tech or silent. Oh, now I can't even. Well, I'm messing up the name
Is
already.
it the dampening system, or
Uh,
the
si-
Silent Connect system?
the Silent Connect system. Did they keep that or did
Yeah.
they fully ditch that thing?
They kept that. I'm like 99%
Interesting.
sure they kept that. I laughed at that last
I
year. I
did
think,
too. I
like,
took it off.
yeah, yeah. It's like, man, I'm just gonna put a carabiner on this thing, and if I
Yeah.
need to pull it up to a tree, which I don't have a tree stand hardly ever, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Each
I
to his own.
I laughed when I saw it. Well, because when I bought it, they're like, "Oh yeah, it's got this new Silent Connect system." I'm like, What am I going to use that for here in Colorado?" Like, well, you hook it to your bow and you pull it up in your tree stand. I'm like, I never hunt in a tree stand, and it's kind of the first thing that I pulled off. So sorry for the
Yeah.
Matthews guys out there that love that new Silent Connect system. I wondered because I felt like a lot of people were kind of ditching it, so I wondered if they would keep it or not. So
No, they kept it, and I think a lot of guys saw through that one because they're charging, I don't know what they're charging, like $60 or $40 for paracord in a spot to connect it. It's like,
yeah,
dude, the first time I ever hunted out of a tree stand, I was like, well, I'm gonna carry this thing up there, and then I'm like, I saw this little paracord dangling out of the tree, and then on it was a carabiner. My buddy Brian had set that up a long time ago. I'm like, well, you don't need all this fancy connect crap. You just put a carabiner on your cam, and then when you get up to the tree stand, you just pull it up. Like, it's not freaking rocket science. It's almost like you're trying to add value and find ways to add value to justify coming out with a new bow, because
yep.
it's like, so, and I know that's maybe a little bit of a negative mind perspective at it, but I mean, I don't know one person that said, oh my god, game changer. Like,
Right.
no, not really. I mean, The one thing that I did like this year is, and I don't even think it was actually a game changer, but they did change the cable guard, and they put it to like the center guard technology, and it's angled down this year. And what that's supposed to do is basically help with your tuning and add a little bit of vein clearance. If you're gaining an eighth of an inch, I would kind of be shocked if you're gaining that much from this new cable guard. And it's to tell you guys exactly what it is. It's the center guard cable containment, and basically it equalizes the angle of the cables during the draw cycle for optimum cam timing while providing additional vein clearance. And so, talking to a lot of Botex, I just read that directly off Matthews. Talking to a lot of Botex, they never had a problem tuning or timing the Matthews in the first place. So it's kind of like we're almost fixing an issue that wasn't even an issue. We're trying to add value into this new platform, new version of the bow we're creating. But the vein clearance, that's basically a side effect of having that lower, cable containment. So, good idea. I thought it was pretty cool. It's thinking outside the box, and it's just, you can see them trying to think of stuff, and I appreciate that. It wasn't like super innovative, but I think it was, like they've been saying, moving the needle incrementally with this bow, and that's just another thing that they did.
And like you said, marketing. I mean, they've got to come out with a new bow every year. It's got to have something different on it. So, and I agree. I mean, I'm kudos to them for trying to, like you said, thinking outside the box. It does look a little bit different on that downward slope. I'll admit that was kind of one of the first things that I noticed when they released it on Instagram. I was like, that's different. Wonder what that does. But it doesn't sound like it's a huge game changer. But like you said, the vein clearance. There's some advantages to it. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you're one of those guys that's running like a super high profile vein, and you're like, oh great, I'm like, I don't. Yeah, I mean, if it gained you an eighth of an inch, I'm like, okay, yeah, I could see that. But any more than that, I'd be shocked. So yeah. I haven't actually measured. I should measure the difference in them and actually get a number that I can tell people. But yeah, it's just those incremental, tiny little update. I would just call it an update to the VXR. Really, is all it is.
So for guys like me that have a VXR, we need to hurry and sell our bow and run by one of these new V3s. Is that what I'm hearing from Garrett?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. I got some beachfront property in Arizona for you too.
Yeah. Well, it's good to hear. I mean, and because I think the VXR was a pretty popular bow last year. I talked to a lot of people that did buy it, and we all love our VXR, and so it's kind of cool to see that they're making progress with it and making changes, but that it's not that big a deal if we stick with our VXR and just keep shooting it for another few years.
I've had plenty of guys message me about this year's Matthews. What do you think? Should I sell this? Should I sell that? I'm like, dude, buy something for a hunt, like an opportunity. Go do, go buy an opportunity. Go do something that you wouldn't have been able to do if you would have spent that extra $300-400. If you sold your old bow and then bought the new one, you're probably out $300 or $400. Go spend that on like a tag, or go take the wife out on, go do something with that money. Because in my opinion, it's your money. You can spend it however you want, but you're better off putting that towards what you actually love doing, hunting. Like, buy an extra opportunity, buy an extra day from work that you can afford to take off because you didn't buy that bow. And every year I do a community YouTube, basically a bow poll. And so I asked this year, I put Matthews, Hoyt, PSE, Bowtech, and Prime, which is coming out with the best bow so far, and 34% said Matthews. And so, I'm going to say probably 32% of those guys would have said Matthews if they would have went backwards.
Exactly.
So I'm joking here, Matthews guys. I'm kind of joking because you guys have the most loyal fan base out of any manufacturer I've ever shot or ever critiqued or ever reviewed. It's like, a lot of guys call it a cult, but the Matthews fan base it's legit. It is very loyal. And even if they went backwards, or like they did this year, they kind of just went sideways and slightly, maybe half a step forward, people are still going to vote that bow number one. And Hoyt came in at 30%, PSE 15, and Bowtech 14. And what's really fascinating is that PSE gained 4% And this year, Hoyt last year was 31%, Matthews was 24%. So, um, Matthews picked up a ton of steam, and Hoyt actually lost 1% this year on that poll alone, which to me, Hoyt was the big winner so far this year for me. So, just really kind of interesting, and that is with 421 votes. So,
Wow. You're right though. I've been a Hoyt guy my whole life, and I love that you use the word cult because, I loved my Hoyt and it was great, but it seems like once I switched to Matthews, like yeah, there's like a community now with Matthews, and it is like a cult that like you're a diehard Matthews, and
ride or
you don't.
die.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, ride or die. You don't look in the other girl's window when you got a Matthews.
Yeah.
You just got that one baby, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny, man. I don't get it. I just want to shoot the best bow,
Yeah.
period. Like for me as a shooter, what complements me and makes me the most accurate, most efficient archer possible, bow hunter, deadly. Like that's what I want. I don't care what name is on it. I just want it to be reliable, accurate, and just the best bow for me. And it doesn't matter what name is on it.
Yep.
So
Well, that's
not everybody's like that.
Well, and that's exactly what when I go to buy a new bow. That's exactly it. I'm gonna shoot every single one of them, and I did last year. I shot every single one. I shot the RX4. I shot Prime's new one. I can't remember what it was called, but yeah, I mean, I shot every single bow, and I felt like that the VXR was the one that I was going to be able to kill the best with. I shot the best with it. It felt
Hmm.
best in my hand. I was most comfortable with it. That's what sells me on a bow, and I think that's how most people should be. But again, the cult thing. Matthews, it does definitely have a cult following,
Yeah.
and that's fine for everybody that's that way. That is perfectly fine, and I feel like I'm kind of going down that road now that I have a Matthews. But
Yeah,
um,
I mean, it's good to be passionate about something, especially when you spend, 11, 1,200 bucks on it,
mhm.
and that's your baby. It's good to be passionate, man. I mean, but when you start putting blinders on and then just being, just very biased, that's when I'm like, okay, maybe this is getting out of hand for you, but you're not there yet, so I don't have to worry about that.
Have you keep me out of that rut?
Yeah.
Hey, what about do you know much about Matthews' other bows that they came out with? Like I think they came out with like the Prima. Hold on, let me
Yeah.
look here. Prima
Yeah.
and
So
Atlas. Anything about those that are cool, special?
So, they've been dabbling around, and they've had a good women's bow in the past. I believe it was called the Avail.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I remember that bow.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, they've got some good other options. I think other manufacturers and people, girls really like that bow. I thought it was just a little stiff, for what it was, but it shot pretty quick, and it was a good bow. And I've got some friends that would actually buy that bow if they found one for a good deal. But I've heard really good things about the Prima, and I've heard, or excuse me, about the Prima, and I have not heard anything about the Atlas yet. And I personally haven't had my hands on either of those.
Hmm.
But the Atlas, it's got a longer brace height. It's kind of a long draw bow. It's up to 34 inches. Has like a 7 3/4 inch brace height, and it's just a kind of like a niche bow. So the guys that are like Greg Poole out there that have super long draws, and or guys that just their knuckles are dragging the ground when they're walking. This would be a good opportunity for them to buy a bow that would easily fit them. And the IBO is not through the roof or anything on it. I mean, it's got a good IBO 350, but it's going to be slower than
Hmm.
if you bought other bows and say you're like a 31-inch draw or 30, 31. It's going to be slower than a lot of your other bows out there, just because the brace height's so darn long. But that would be a really good shooter for a lot of guys if you're super long. And then the Prima, I personally haven't shot it, but I've heard really good things about it.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
only thing I would caution is that it does have a short brace height, and so that doesn't lend to being very forgiving as a bow. It gives you more of a chance to screw up.
Yeah.
Is basically, long story short, what that does.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Well, that's interesting. That's quite the lineup we have from Matthews. this
Hmm.
year. Let's shift gears a little bit here, and switch to. We're going to switch teams here for a minute and move to the opponent, I guess we'll call it for this episode.
Yeah.
Let's switch to Hoyt and talk about their new lineups. I, I have nothing bad to say about Hoyt. Like I said, I've been a Hoyt guy my entire life, and they're well followed. I mean, if you're a social media guy, which obviously being podcasters, we have to be social media guys as well. There's a lot of big names that are shooting Hoyt bows. So they're legit bows. I've kind of felt the same thing about them, that there's not a lot of changes, but again, I'm kind of speaking out my what there, because I haven't shot the RX5. I did shoot the RX4, but tell us a little bit
Hmm.
about. Let's start with the RX5, and then we'll move into the really cool bow. Um, but with
It's all good.
RX5, has it much different than the RX4, or what are the differences there?
So what you're looking at is you're gonna no, I mean it's slightly different in the aspect of like the riser and everything. It's I'm just gonna be honest with you. I personally wouldn't buy one just because a lot the luster is worn off for me with the RX5s.
Yeah.
That's completely my opinion there. And if you got the RX5, good for you. But I can tell you that there's just Hoyt made the most changes this year. However, some of the changes they made on their bows, I don't understand what they did with their RX5 this year, because it's and here's my biggest gripe about it, and really my only gripe is you pay $1,700 MSRP, $1,600 around there in the shop, and immediately when I see a price hike like that, my mind says, okay, so if most bows are about $1,000, most of them are 1,000 to 1,100. Is it 50 to 60% better than all the other bows available on the market? If not, it's not a good deal. If it is, hey, maybe it's something that we need to take a look at. Is the RX5, in my opinion, 50 to 60% better than the rest of the bows on the market? No. Um, it's a carbon bow. It looks cool. It kind of has that prestige, and it's kind
Yeah.
of just a sexy bow. It's
Yeah.
just it's carbon. It's a good looking bow. I will say that it is heavy, and that's my main gripe for a carbon bow. It is heavy. It's
Yeah.
4.4 pounds. So when you think carbon, you should be kissing 4 pounds or under 4 pounds for a lot of the carbon bows out there. And if you're spending that extra 500 to 600 bucks, a lot of guys, it's for the carbon look. It's for the carbon feel when you grab it in cold weather. And the biggest benefit is it's lighter. And this year it's just not lighter. It's zero point 0.2 pounds lighter, I mean, zero point 0.3 pounds lighter than I think the 33, but it's 4.4 pounds, and that's heavy for a carbon bow. If you look at PSE, I want to say they're like 3.9. I'd have to go over and look at it, but PSE's knocking it out of the park with the Mach 1, and it's the same price. And I personally wouldn't buy the RX5 over the Mach 1 Stealth. I mean, there's just no chance of me doing that. The big changes this year that all the bows got are the binary cams, and I think that out of all the bows that I've seen this year, without shooting them all, but just looking at them all, and I have shot the Hoyts, is that Hoyt made the biggest and best changes this year, in my opinion, and that is 100% to do with the cams.
What's your thoughts on Cause isn't the sight mounting different on the Hoyts this year? Like, don't they have like a Picatinny rail or something on the front of them that you can
Yeah.
mount your sight on? What's your thoughts on that?
I love that idea. Back when they came out with the Hoyt, or with the integrated rest idea, my mind immediately went to the site, and I'm like, man, that would be cool if we could do that to the site. That's the first thing I thought, because the rest is like, okay, it's the rest. It's not a lot of weight. It mounts into the bow, which is cool. It's a great way to upsell you to buy something more expensive that you don't really need.
Hmm.
It just, in my opinion, it was solving an issue that wasn't really that big of an issue. But having the sight in line with the riser instead of mounted off to the side, I'm like, as soon as I saw the rest, I'm like, someone's got to come out with that.
Yeah.
And this year you saw that. And so I think it's a great idea. I think it's really cool. I think the availability of sites right now sucks
Yeah.
for
You can't
for
find
the
many that
Picatinny
you
action.
can use on it.
Yeah. I imagine, every manufacturer right now, I think Fuse, and there's one other that has sites available for them. But yeah, I guarantee you, Montana, Black Gold, Spot Hog, all these guys are scrambling right now trying to make or get the demand out for the Picatinny front mount bracket. And I think it's a great thing when you're putting weight out the front of your bow, but you're not putting it on the side of your bow. And another factor is that you can now mount your bow stabilizer even closer to the riser, which is another, for me, is another benefit. Anytime you can center the weight into your bow instead of having it flop off one side or the other, you're going to have an easier to shoot bow. It's going to be easier to level, and inherently more accurate. And so I think that's a really good move, and I think it's really cool. I like that idea, and I'm glad somebody did it.
Yeah. Talk to me about this little stabilizer that they have on them as well. I was watching a very popular hunting YouTube channel the other day, and they
Sure.
were doing a bow build, and they showed that little thing, and what the hell is that thing?
So it's called a shortstop stabilizer, and or dampener, whatever they want to call it, but they call it the shortstop. And a lot of guys have been calling it other inappropriate things,
Yeah,
but
I wanted to as
um,
well, but I didn't.
yeah, it's funny. I mean, I'll give them that. I don't care, but it really does help dampen the bow, and it does help the bow aim a lot better. And I think that is that and the cam. Um, and a lot of guys are like, oh, well, they're copying, the Matthews with that, and they're
Yes.
doing this and they're doing that. And I'm like, listen, man, everybody's copied everybody. And if
Yep.
you want to get technical, everybody's copying Darton on most of their stuff. So let's just get past that right now,
Hmm.
and let's just kind of look at the bows for what they are. And if we keep the mindset, we want to shoot the best bow for us. Like, who cares who stole what, right? Because there's hardly any original ideas out there anymore when it comes to these bows. There's been a few, and we've seen them this year. And the front mount Picatinny that you mentioned was one of them. But
Yeah.
the shortstop stab, yeah, I mean that's and me personally, a lot of guys are bagging on Hoyt this year because they're like, oh, they copied Matthews here, they copied Matthews here, and I would win a court case saying that they copied more of PSC than anybody. So I guarantee you, I could put up a better argument for that. But back to the shortstop stab, that's a great idea. Putting the weight kind of down below the handle there is going to really help with the aimability of the bow and the stability of the bow. They have that shock pod down there as well, which
Hmm.
straight up, that's a Matthews. I mean, that's what
Absolutely.
Matthews did.
Yeah.
And it is the best carbon bow they've come out with yet. So if you were going to get, an RX4, RX5, or any of the other versions, this one is going to be my favorite automatically because of the cams and because of the shortstop on the bottom, and having the option to even mount something down there. It's inherently it's going to feel better to you straight
Yeah.
up. That's all it is there. That's basically brass tacks.
Okay.
So
Well, yeah, and like I said, I saw it, and I thought, again, here's that Matthews Colt seeds coming out at me now. I saw that, and I was like,
hmm
okay, that looks very similar to what my Matthews has on it as
uh-huh.
well. And, I'm going to be completely honest with you. So my previous Hoyt didn't have that on it. And I did notice when I shot that Matthews last year, like that does, the aiming and all that, it does make it more
Yeah.
stable. It dampens in my hand. I mean, it just worked very well. And I was like, oh, that stupid little thing that sticks out down there really does work. And so I honestly actually was pretty happy to see that on these Hoyts. I think it does make a difference. So
100%. And I'm going to actually have tests coming out here very soon that it's going to be basically, I don't know what the term is for it, but you're going to be able to see the actual data of how the bows hold and how they perform on the shot, and you can comparatively actually contrast that to other bows. So I'll
okay,
be shooting the RX5, the Ventum, and the V3 against each other here very soon with a device that I can track the recoil, the shot, the draw cycle, the aim, the stability on the shot, and how does the bow aim. I'll be able to track that and actually show you real time what that bow is doing for me as a shooter, and basically have real world data in areas that we've never had before. So,
wow,
and I think that you're going to see, that Matthews and Hoyt are going to be very, very close this year. And prior to this, they haven't been. Matthews has been kicking them in the nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And I said this in my video is that, somebody had a come to Jesus meeting with the engineers and the marketing team at Hoyt. Basically somebody said to somebody that, hey man, we got an ugly baby and we got to change it. And they did. They gave that bow a lot of upgrades this year. And the big one, I'm telling you right now, is the cams.
Yeah. Tell me about those cams. I mean, I know you kind of touched on the binary cams. Maybe try to break it down into layman's terms of, if there is that guy that's out there looking for a bow, whether it be the Ventum or the RX5 or whatever, like what's so special about that you're loving?
Well, it's inherently more smoother. And let's go back to what they were shooting. They were shooting a cam and a half, or what a lot of guys would refer to a hybrid cam. It's kind of like a happy medium cam, but and they've yoke tuned in the past for tuning and stuff like that. I'm a big fan of yoke tuning. I think it's easier than using shims.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only drawback, in my opinion, to this cam. But some guys would come back and argue that says, well, once you have it set, you forget, and you just don't have to worry about it. Which, in my experience with my PSE with shims, has been pretty darn true. I did have a little bit of mid-season tuning that was going on, but I dropped my bow and a few other things, and so I can't blame it on the cams or the shims or anything because I don't know for sure what was going on. But I can tell you that it is inherently more locked in, kind of like once it's tuned kind of thing, which is nice. But it is a little bit tougher to get it there. It'll take you a little bit more. It took you a little bit longer. It's just not adding a twist in or out of a cable. It's actually taking the axle out, swapping where the shims are, and then placing everything back in together. All in all, it probably takes you an extra 5 or 10 minutes. So, but a binary, you've got PSE, you've got Bowtech, and now you've got Hoyt, and they're all shooting. Relatively, they all feel really similar nowadays. It's kind of funny. But yeah, a binary cam is gonna be smooth. It's gonna feel really good on the draw. It offers good speeds. It's if you like shooting Bowtech, or if you like shooting the PSE the last few years, you're gonna like this year's Hoyts. It's just they're gonna be very similar, the same feel. I can tell you right now, this has been my favorite Hoyt that I've ever shot. Period. Any of them this year. And it's all because of the cam system, and it just feels really good. I like binary cams. I think they feel great. So that's just my preference as a shooter, though.
It's like buying a brand new truck right now. You go buy a Chevy, you go buy a Ford, you go buy a Dodge. They're all going to drive pretty similar. They're all going to be super smooth and super nice. And I think that's kind of what you're getting now with everybody, with a lot of these people moving to these binary cams. They're all going to be smooth. They're all going to feel very similar.
Yeah, and binary cams aren't new. It's just some manufacturers claim that this was the best. Matthews, aka Solo Cam, and I mean, and look what they're shooting now, and basically it's just companies making changes that when they absolutely have to, and I think Hoyt was probably getting their ding dings kicked the last few years. I think they were losing market shares. They were losing shooters like Dudley. And they really did have to make a change this year, in my opinion, in order to stay competitive, because they weren't, and they hadn't been since, I wasn't a fan of the Defiant series, and so I haven't been on board with Hoyt for, I don't know how long that was, 5 years, 6 years ago. So
Yeah.
I haven't been a fan of their bows for quite some time, and I bought the RX1 when it came out strictly because the only reason is I wanted carbon. I ignored everything else, and so. It is what it is. One thing that I really do like is I like a solid back wall. I shoot a hinge. Some guys like a different feeling on a back wall. So if you've shot Hoyts in the past and you've like, man, the spongy give feeling on the back wall, that's not really there anymore. It's got a really nice solid back wall. I like that as a shooter. I feel like I'm not losing my draw, my anchor when I'm shooting with back tension. I can feel that I'm on the back wall, and then I'm executing the shot. I really like that, and that's one thing that I've really have not liked in the past with the Hoyts, is that it's just a sponge of a back wall, and they got rid of that with this cam too.
I'm glad you touched on that, because actually that question that popped in my mind when you were talking earlier is I wanted to ask about that back wall, and so I'm glad that's much improved on this one.
100%.
Oddly enough, as I've been watching social media, I don't see many of the RX5s in people's hands. Most of the people that are big Hoyt guys are actually shooting the Bentams. Why is that?
I think, well, I don't see Cam Hanes shooting it anymore. Do you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, true.
Yeah. So, I think people are realizing that, the benefit, the bow is not more accurate. It doesn't perform better. There's really, and it's an aesthetic value, and it's supposed to be lighter. Well, it's supposed to be lighter. And right now you're not getting that. You're getting the aesthetic, you're getting the warm feeling when it's cold outside, but you're losing the weight reduction, and there's no extra performance there. The cams are the same. The brace heights are really similar, practically the same. The weights are really similar, same cams. I mean, it's just why? I mean, I think a lot of guys are starting to ask that question. Why would I?
Hmm.
I think that's what you're getting.
Yeah. With and we didn't touch on this on the RX5s, but are there different ATAs? Can you get different sizes on them? And same with the
Yeah, good
Bantams?
question. Yeah, so the Carbon RX5 Ultra is 34-inch axle to axle, and
Mm.
they elongated the brace height to 7 inches, which that's going to be a really sweetheart to shoot. It's a
Yeah.
carbon bow. It's a carbon bow. It's 4.6 pounds. So,
Holy cow.
it's heavy.
That is
It's
heavy.
heavy. Yeah. For a carbon bow, that is basically an anchor for a carbon bow.
Yeah. Man.
That's normal for an aluminum bow nowadays.
So does the Bentham also have
But
different
the other one,
ATAs as well?
yeah, they do. The RX5 regular
Oh,
carbon
sorry.
is going to be a 30-inch axle to axle
Oh,
and
okay.
4.4 pounds. And so, but yeah, so you're going to have a Ventum 30, and and then you're going to have like a Ventum 27 if memory serves me.
Okay.
But yeah, they're basically a 30, and let's see, the other one is a 27. I'm like 99% sure. But
I
yeah,
can pull it
in,
up here.
in in my opinion, it's been one of the best shooting bows I've shot. It's a 30 and a 33. I was
Oh, gotcha.
thinking Matthews there for a second, but um, and these are some of the best shooting bows I've shot in a long time through Hoyt. And to be honest with you, it feels like a lot of the other bows feel right now. So it's like they caught back up is basically what they did. Same IBO speeds because it's this same cam, same brace heights, pretty much. 4.6 pounds for the Venom 30. Um, and the Venom 33 is 4.7 pounds and 6 3/8 brace height. So it's very shootable bows this year. Instead of having to cam, another benefit to these cams is instead of changing between a number 2 and a number 3 cam, if you're like a on the edge of one of those draw lengths, it's about a 28.5 or 29. If you're on the edge of one of those cams, you'd have to go up to like a 29.5. You'd have to shoot like a number 3 cam.
Oh, okay.
um, this year they have two different modules, so you don't have to do all those cam swaps or anything if you're trying to get a different draw length, or if you're outside the draw length adjustability on number 2 or the number 3. So they have a module this year, which I like, but and they're claiming that this isn't true, but the you're losing quite a bit on the bottom end of the modules, and they said that wasn't going to be an issue when it's an issue with mods. You lose efficiency, and
Yeah.
this isn't any different.
Gotcha. Interesting. It's funny how you were talking about like the Matthews and how they're really focused on the Eastern hunters, the East Coast um, folks. And then I'm
Hmm.
just looking at the Hoyt's models, and it really is. You can tell they're more tailored for a Western hunting with that Ultra that's 34 ATA. I mean that's a big stable bow. You feel like you can shoot that a ways.
Yeah, and the Venom 33, God, that was a shooter, but the Venom 30 was sure nice. And if you look at a lot of their pro staff, you've got Cameron Haynes and you've got Joe Rogan, the Bro guys, Hushin, all these are giant Western hunting guys. I mean,
Hmm.
it just kind of makes sense. I mean, Matthews sponsors a lot of different kind of folks too. I understand, but it just seems like Hoyt is more predominantly. They sponsor the some of the film festivals, Western, like the Western side hunting film festivals.
Hmm.
They sponsor a lot of those, and it's just they have. And I say this every year. Hoyt has some of the best ground game out there. They've got so many of the big personalities in the hunting industry. It's crazy. And I think they cater more. I agree with you. I think they cater more to Western hunting than Matthews does for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, I want to go back to one thing real quick, and I was going to ask this earlier, and I'm sorry for all the
Sure.
listeners out there. We're going to kind of go way back here with that shortstop. Is that something that can be like? Can you change that out for different sizes?
Well, you could put a different stabilizer on there. The shortstop itself is just basically a tiny little stabilizer with weights on the end. So, I mean, if you wanted to put more weights on there, I imagine you could. I would
Oh,
probably, me personally, would just put a stabilizer on that bottom bracket and call her good.
okay.
And this is where you start seeing similarities with the PSC, and I can get into this real quick and make my case here. PSC last year, I think it was, they came out with that bottom stabilizer bracket,
Yeah.
and inherently, I love the way the bow held more with a stabilizer in that bottom bracket. It just felt better. Same kind of concept that's going on with like the Synergy Prime Synergy series, where they have the weights just right in the center of the riser, and so it just feels like really stable platform. That's kind of what Matthews and PSE and all these Hoyt, that's kind of what all those guys are chasing without actually making the riser and the handle in the middle of the Synergies or in the center of the riser like the Synergy did. So they're kind of getting that same feel without the same design. And so, Synergy was probably the most stable platform I've ever shot. I was inherently way more accurate with that bow than any other bow I've ever shot. But these other bows, with the design and where they're putting the weights and the stabilizer brackets, like the Venom 30 or the Venom series or starting with the NXTs on PSE, they're inherently more stable. I mean, it feels so much better, and so you can leave that on there. Your stabilizer, technically, if you look at where the stabilizer bracket is below the grip,
Uh-huh.
you'd probably have to have a good 4 to 6 inches to get to where that shortstop is. And it just, I don't know. I like the way it feels. I imagine some guys are just going to roll with that shortstop and not even put a stab on there. I could see that happening.
Wow. I guess
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's putting the weight in the right places. So yeah,
it
I
is.
I could see that working, and yeah, not needing a huge stab, especially for hunting purposes. I guess if you're target shooting, you still probably want that long stab out there. But yeah, that for hunting
Yeah.
purposes, I could see that too. People just leaving it as it is and go hunting.
Yeah, I mean, it is, like I said, it's a very stable platform the way that it is with that shortstop on there. And if you did want to, what I would personally do is I would shoot it with it on there, and then I'd take like an 8 or 10 inch stab, and I'd put it below the upper bracket. I'd screw it in there, shoot it for a few at 20 yards or 30 yards, whatever your shop has, and then I'd take it off, and then I'd shoot it on the bottom bracket with a 8 or 10 inch stabilizer and see what the difference is and just see what you think feels. It's going to be almost like shooting a different bow because it's just going to aim different for you.
Yeah.
And when you're testing these bows out and shooting these bows, these are things that you should be testing. You shouldn't just be going there shooting a bare bow without a sight on it and just saying, "Oh wow, the draw feels great." Well, there's so much more that you should be looking at just besides the draw.
Yeah, you want that bow set up as much as you possibly can, and then change that
100%.
setup several times to make sure you get what you're really looking for.
That's the way that I would buy a bow, and that's the way that I would prefer that they sold bows.
Yeah, well, you think about it. You talked about the price points on some of these bows. The Hoyts being $1,600, $1,700. Most other bows being around that $1,000 mark. You're spending a lot of money on these bows. To fork out that money, take the time, go to the shop, and I've never seen a shop that's not willing to do whatever you want to do to that bow to get it to feel how you want to do it. So test it in a bunch of different forms.
100%. And the aluminum bows this year for Hoyt are MSRP of 1,200, or
Oh,
probably 1,100 in your shop. But the carbon bows that's the 1,600 to $1,700 price range that you're going to be seeing there.
and don't buy that bow. So,
I personally wouldn't. Yeah, yeah.
so, and actually, I know we're going to do this in a two-part series, so maybe don't comment on the other bows that we're going to talk about later. But if you had to
Uh-huh.
pick out of all these bows that we talked about tonight, is the Ventum your bow?
It would probably be so far, based off of what I've shot, which is only the Matthews and the PSC, or the Matthews and the Hoyt. I would choose the Hoyt, and I'd probably choose the Hoyt, either one. I'd probably choose the Hoyt 30 just because I would shoot it. And not even, I mean, it's got a 6 and 1 inch brace, 1/8 brace height, which I love.
Hmm.
It's a little heavy, But it's a sweetheart to shoot, and I would shoot it faster than the 33. Not that speed's everything, but it would fit inside my SKB too. I have a
Nice.
short, really short hard case that I haven't been able to put a bow in for a few years because I bought it when I had the Halon, and that bow was fairly short. But
I just
um,
put the budget bow in it. It deserves that case.
yeah, right. The budget bow is my bow fishing bow now.
Oh, is it? Nice.
Yeah,
That's what I should do with my
yeah.
Tricon is make it into a bow fishing bow.
Dude, yeah, just crank the poundage down to as low as it'll go because you don't want to break your bow fishing nocks
Yeah.
and let her rip because I won't sell this bow to anybody because it's blown up on me 3 times.
Oh my
So it's not
gosh.
like I want to sell it to anybody. I don't want to sell somebody a lemon, but
Yeah.
yeah. So right now it'd probably be the Venom 30, and honestly, I'm not probably going to switch this year because my Evoke 31 feels really similar to the Venom series this year. And it's kind of funny how they're both binaries. My Evoke 31 is a 31-inch ATA. It's like a 6-inch brace height or 6 1/4 somewhere in there, and it's about the same speeds. I mean, it's practically a Hoyt. The way it sits right now. It might have a little bit stiffer draw, but
That's
it shoots really well. It's super stable, and it feels a lot like the Venom series does this year. So there's no really need for me to even switch. And I'm keeping that Hoyt or that excuse me, I'm keeping that PSE Evoke 31 another year unless the Bowtech absolutely screams at me this year to buy me, but I don't see it doing that.
yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I'm excited to talk about those bows as well and I've got a lot of the PSE is getting a lot of attention nowadays, especially
Yeah.
because Dudley is over there and man, they're making some drastic changes. So I'm excited to talk about that one as soon as you get a chance to shoot it. So I'm excited to talk about these bows coming up, but I appreciate your information on the Matthews and the Hoyt. Was there anything that we missed that you wanted to touch on, Garrett?
The let offs are very similar for the Hoyt and the Matthews.
Yes.
They come in 80 and 85. The Hoyt basically straight up ripped off the let off adjustment from PSE. So it's like one screw and it has two settings where PSE has one screw and three different settings. So you get 80, 85, and 90 with with the Hoyt. There it is. You only get 80 versus 85, and so the Hoyt and the Matthews are so similar spec this year that if you shot the 30 versus the 31, that'd be a really fair comparison. But you're probably going to have, like we discussed earlier, put the Matthews a half-inch shorter just to get the same feel.
Mm-hmm.
Or else, if you don't do that, you're going to shoot a bow that's a little long for you, and it's going to feel stiffer. And the Matthews is stiffer anyways, but you're going to make it feel even more so. But shoot them all, guys. And, hopefully I didn't burn anybody too hard on this podcast. I give it out to all the manufacturers when it's well deserved. And I think I haven't said this in probably 5 years. Hoyt did a good job this year. They made the biggest and best changes out of any manufacturer that I've seen. And, I would shoot them all. And I wish that people could do blind shooting tests when buying a bow, because I think they'd be shocked at which one they choose if they were brand specific. So
You just made a whole lot of Hoyt guys very happy with that comment.
well, enjoy it because it might not last. We'll see what come out next year.
I was gonna say we'll see what happens next.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate you having me, man, and I enjoy talking bows, and hopefully you'll have me back on so we can finish the conversation with the PSE and the Bowtech.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I said, I'm excited to do that conversation. We'll get that part 2 out to you guys pretty quickly as soon as possible, so that and I know a lot of people are thinking about hunts right now. I know Utah's application period is open right now. Everybody's trying to decide what they're going to do. And so for those people that draw an archery tag, you want to know about bows, and if you're in the market for a new bow, which one you should go for. And so we'll try to get that out to you guys as soon as possible, and I'll let you guys all know when that is released. But look forward to that. A lot of great information in this podcast. Guys, if there's something that we breezed over that you felt like you wanted more information, I'm going to speak for Garrett here, and myself. If you guys have questions, reach out to us. We're more than happy to to answer questions. Obviously, if I can't answer it, I'm going to be calling Garrett and saying, Garrett, what is going on here and how do I answer this question? But Garrett,
Yeah.
actually, if people need to reach out to you, what is the best way? Is Instagram the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, Instagram is, and I try and be as quick as I can be on the responses. Sometimes guys barely finish writing the message before I get back to them,
I can attest
and
to
so
that.
yeah, I'm extremely responsive when I can be, and so that's on point with Garrett Weaver, all one word. If you want to do it through Facebook, that's fine. Sometimes they go to the junk box and I don't see them, but Instagram is the best way. You can get a hold of me on YouTube as well through a comment. I look at all the comments. I shouldn't probably, but I do.
Yeah.
And I try to be extremely accessible. So whether you think it's a stupid question or whether you think it's a bad question or a good question, just I'm here to help, man. And if I usually stay up until midnight every night answering questions or watching a TV show with my wife. So hit me up whenever you need, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can.
Sounds good. And I'll link down in the show notes for everybody that's listening. I'll link Garrett's YouTube channel. So you can click on that, check out any videos. And like I said, when I have questions with my bow or setup or and he does a lot of reviews, not just on bows, but arrows and sights, and I mean just every component of bows, and actually a lot of different things. I go to Garrett's channel quite often just to kind of help answer some of the questions that I have. Yeah, no problem, man. So guys, I'll put a link to that in the show notes so that you guys can go check that out. And again, reach out if you have any questions. So, Garrett, appreciate your time, man. I will let you back to your evening. Appreciate the information.
Yeah, I got to go lose this beer belly, man. So I'll let you get going here, and then we'll reconnect here when I get my hands on these other bows.
All right, sounds good. Go get on that treadmill.
Thanks, man. See ya.
All right, see you, buddy. Bye.